Hello, hello, hello. This is Danny Ceballos with Unleashed Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. Welcome, everybody. Super excited about our guest today. Anna Melikian is I have to say, a friend from a number of years ago and instrumental in helping me to be not only in how to run a new business, but also to understand my own limitations, my ability to be most productive. Gave me great insights into who I am and how I tick. And I am just so excited to get her to share some of her wisdom, insight, experience with you all, dear listeners. So hang on tight. It's going to be a great ride. Anna, before I introduce you with your bio, can I get you just to come on and say hello to everybody?
Hello, and it's a true pleasure to be here with you. It's a joy.
Yeah, the joy is all mine, I assure you, and will be our listeners as well. So, a little bit about Anna. So, Anna was born in Portugal, and Anna Melikian has almost had to repeat the fourth grade because of her bad spelling. Despite being diagnosed with dyslexia, Anna earned 2 master's degrees and a Ph.D. in psychology. She taught at universities in both Portugal and Spain and started several entrepreneurial initiatives. Now living in the US, Anna combines her expertise in psychology with her trademark loving optimism to help audiences explore and embrace possibilities beyond their comfort zone. As a keynote speaker and the host of the Mindset Zone podcast, Anna helps audiences break through their mindset limitations, upgrade their mind's operating systems, and achieve better results than ever while enjoying the process. Please give a warm welcome to Anna Melikian. Anna, welcome. So good to have you here. So good. So anything else that you want to tell us before we get started about the work that you're doing, who you are, your background, anything else?
No, the main thing that I think for people listening is I have a passion about helping people out there making a bigger impact. I think there are so many people trying to make a positive change out there. And my mission is to help them amplify that impact while avoiding burnout. Because we need people to be in their best, doing the best in terms of high performance, but without burning out.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I feel like you and I are sharing the same brain around this. So my listeners are middle senior and executive managers, primarily middle managers who are leading with their hearts. They are leading
Yes.
with their hearts, right? That's tends to be the world I operate in, yours too. And so your messages, your insights, your passion, your commitment is particularly relevant, I think, for my listeners, and that's exactly why you're here. So thank you. Terrific. So you have a very interesting past. Listeners, you can hear that Anna has the richest, most delightful accent. So I really appreciate that you're coming from a global experience in so many different ways as well. That is part and parcel, I think, of the work that we are doing right now. We can't separate by boundaries any longer. That said, we're in a very different world than we were just a few years ago when you and I met in terms of how things operate. But you were writing some things that really caught my interest about the happiness fallacy. And I'm wondering, can we talk a little bit about that? And then, of course, I want to talk to some more about some of the work that you're doing right now. But tell us a little bit about the happiness fallacy.
So the happiness, because there are loads of talk out there that is great about how can we improve well-being. How can we, and we know that if people are in a positive place, they are more productive, they have less health problems, teams work better. But there is also a lot of information out there that I think is a little bit misleading, that leads to people to start, oh, this doesn't work for me, or gosh, what is wrong with me? And that is a very bad dynamic. And that is one of the reasons when I was working in one of my keynotes, I realized that in my own personal life, and I'm being studying positive psychology for more than a decade, really since the 2000 when it became a thing. I realized that sometimes we have to be able to speak about the nuances in a simple way that people get it and understand that there are misbeliefs. Fallacies are really misbeliefs. So I'm in the mission of clarifying some of the misbeliefs around happiness that are keeping us stuck.
Okay, great. So, this is a biggie. So, I also am, I mean, my coach training was in positive psychology. So, I'm a big fan of Martin Seligman and learned optimism and all of that work. So, what do you think about all that? Does that stuff, do that still hold water? Still
Oh,
hold?
absolutely, absolutely. But we have to go to the problem is the oversimplification of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have what positive psychology did, and Martin Seligman is instrumental on that. Is okay. We knew in psychology for many years that there were people thriving, but the focus was not there in studying what makes people thrive, what's made people do the amazing things that human beings can do. The focus of psychology during the 20th century was more on the mental illness and what we can do to help people. That is a very noble and very important even nowadays. There are space for both areas, abnormal psychology and positive psychology, and many other perspectives in psychology, social psychology, with artificial intelligence, and it's so important. So we need all these voices, all these perspectives to help us to understand how we work as human beings and how can we unleash the potential that we have.
I love that. I love that. You know, when I started doing my work as an independent consultant, I said I am going to be a happiness evangelist.
Ah,
I want to work with managers because I think the science is really clear when we tap into this thing called happiness, we're more productive, we're more engaged, we're more enlivened, we're in our genius zone, and that happiness is defined in so many ways. And I think that's where I kind of got tripped up. And I think that's what you're
yes,
getting at now. So,
yes.
and I stopped talking about happiness because people oftentimes were misunderstanding what I was talking about, right?
And
So, how do you define happiness? What is it that we're talking about?
so happiness, so let's start with the definition and then we can
Yeah.
maybe go to the misbeliefs around it. Um, and this is like, what is the weather? You ask to everybody and you will have a different definition.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
But an important point is to see happiness is more, imagine that happiness is a plant that can flourish and can be absolutely beautiful, absolutely strong, and we can enjoy it. If we have a plant, and if happiness is our plant that we have to take care of, and we want this plant to thrive, and if we try to make this plant thrive by pulling the leaves of the plant, oh, you have to grow, let's pull it a little bit. What is going to happen? We are going to kill the plant. But
Mhm.
that means that we cannot do anything about? Absolutely not. If we are the caretakers of this plant, we can make sure that there is enough sun for the plant, there is enough humidity. We can create the conditions that allow the plant to thrive. So, happiness is this byproduct of the things that we cultivate in our lives. And the end product can be more positive things, more things that make us thrive and make us expand and see more possibilities than the other way around. That will be things based on fear and based on more on negativity. But we cannot, one of the misbeliefs around happiness is that just smile and be happy.
Right.
That
Right.
is a very flat view of it, because yes, there is some, if we smile we can bring some body awareness of a positive emotion that can help in certain circumstances, but it's not something that we can force. It's like, another example will be if you have problems in falling asleep or insomnia, And if you are in bed and you are trying very, very hard to fall asleep, that is the recipe to not falling asleep. You have to learn to let go, relax, do and then it's a spontaneous thing that you cannot force to happen. And I think one of the dynamics that are preventing people more to tap into the happiness is that trying to force it.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I love that. So let me test what I think I'm hearing you say. Happiness by itself, to work on it directly may not be the best way of increasing
Cor-
happiness, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Is something that is a state that we can live more time in it. And there are some people, we also have to understand some dynamics behind it. Some people are wired to see the glass half full, and some people are wired to see the glass half empty. And okay, there is an author, Sonia Lubrovinsky, that has a beautiful book called The How of Happiness. And in that book, she uses the image of a pie. It's in stats to a graph that we can use is the pie graph. And so she uses that image to bring together many of the research in positive psychology. And we know that about 50% of our happiness, kind of our well-being, comes from genetical things. Some
Yes.
people, let's blame our parents for that.
Yes.
Okay, 50% has to do with the genes that the family of origin that allow us to see the glass half full or half empty, things in a more positive way, more negative way, more energy, less energy. But we still have the other 50%, the other half of the pie. Interesting enough, according to this research, uh, only 10% of our well being or happiness comes from life circumstances. And we go, what? And it's true, only 10% comes from life circumstances. And I absolutely, if somebody is living through bad life circumstances, believe me, I'm with you. When we are in it, doesn't look like 10%, looks like 1,000%.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's be honest, but in hindsight, when we look back and when we look to people that went over very tough life circumstances, we see that is I like to use the image. We sometimes absolutely we cannot control the cards that we are given, and it has to do with the genes, has to do with the life circumstances, that lemons that are thrown our way, but we can decide how we play those cards, what we do with those lemons, and there is the power there. And it reminds us of the other slice that is left. So if 50% is genes or um, and the 10% life circumstances that we don't have by definition much control over, we still have 40% that is a space for what we can do in terms of beliefs, in terms of mindsets, in terms of attitude that allow us to really transform our lives and the lives of others.
Yes. 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 I love that. And I would think that that 40%, when we leverage that, can actually in some ways maybe help shape the other 10%, maybe
Absolutely.
not the 50%, but we can keep moving the odds in our
Yeah.
favor.
But even the 50%, we know that in terms of your genes, yes, we have genes that but there is this thing of turning on and off the
Yes, that's right.
genes
That's right.
that allow us. So we have some power even on that.
That's wonderful. So that the onus, that the responsibility in working towards this thing called happiness is in working on the circumstances that we have some control over to impact those circumstances that we think we don't have some control over, but we actually can impact. So let's bring it back to
Yes.
workplace, right?
Yes.
So I'm a manager. I just got to get my work done. I'm trying to keep the boss happy. I'm trying to keep the client happy. I'm trying to keep I'm not worried about my happiness, but in fact I am. In fact, I was just coaching a client and she's miserable. She's miserable. And the coaching is around, bringing some new perspective to her circumstances so she can at least survive this, right? And kind of hopefully thrive through this. But are there some strategies, some tactics, some resources, some things that you can point our listeners to who are like, man, now that I'm hearing about it, I realize that happiness is important. What can I do to build my happiness and still be effective in my leadership role, my management role?
So, a couple of nuances here. We have to be very careful, and I'm going to be speaking a lot and giving ideas that really work well in the field of normalcy. And I want to make a special underline here, because if anybody listening to this, you
Yes.
are listening and you are thinking, I can't, I just can't. I barely are able to do the getting out of bed, brushing my teeth, doing the that we are speaking another things that you can have being in a depression, and there are loads of resources out there. Please mobilize those resources and ask for help, because when we are in that state, the laws of gravity don't work the same way. So what can work for other people will not. You really have to take care of that, go into a neutral space first, in order then to be able to use many of the things that we will be being speaking here. But let's imagine, yeah, it's important, because otherwise gives them another reason to put themselves down and aggravate the problem, instead of leading them to the solutions that exist out there. But
Awesome.
let's imagine that that miserable that you describe is horrible, but is still within the normal range of misery. That is, all of us, if we live years enough, we know some of it.
Yes.
So the awareness of it, kudos to the person being aware of it. And usually that happens when there is some overwhelm and burn and signs, things are starting to burn out. And I think people in the leadership world, they are, and in the managing, they are somehow familiar with the concept of Maslow, Abraham Maslow, of the pyramid of needs. So that can be, I like to use points of reference that people are already familiar, because if we look to Maslow pyramid of needs, we can see that the physiological needs are at the base: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and personal safety needs are there. So let's make sure that you are taking care of those needs. Are you sleeping enough?
Amen.
Are you drinking enough water? Are you taking care of yourself? Is the thing. Are you putting your oxygen mask first? Because sometimes these people that are in working in organizations, they are really trying to make their best, helping everybody, pleasing up, pleasing down, having their own life, their own families, and whatever the crises that are going on there, they are trying to do it all, and they are not taking care of themselves. There is The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People of Steve R. Covey. That is one of the classics. And the seven habit that involves all the other habits is sharpening the saw, taking care of yourself. I like to give, because we don't go out there to the forest anymore with a axe to put down trees. So I like to give the example more of a pencil, because okay, people of our generation, maybe next generation, maybe in a couple of years, this is not a good example anymore, but I think for most listeners, they still can relate with having a pencil, a traditional pencil in their hands. So they have this experience that you have a pencil and you have a sharp at the end and you can write, but arrives to a moment that the point starts to get dull. If you keep going and going and going and you don't stop to sharpen your pencil, what is going to happen? Is going to The results are not going to be good, and but we keep doing that. We keep going and going and going. I still write, so let's push it more, let's force it more. It's still right, but the results are not good. But I don't have time to breathe. You teach people to do a 30 seconds breathing exercise. I don't have time. Imagine, I just want people to pause for a moment and think about the contradiction of that statement that happens so much. And I fall into it when we I don't have time to do a 30 seconds breathing exercise. Okay, something is wrong in that picture. We have to breathe in order to be able to function. And if we breathe better, we are going to be able to function better. So, creating and working with a coach is one of the ways of creating a pause. I like to call this the macro pauses that allow us to reflect about what is going on, increase our self awareness, that allow us to do something about and go on and experiment with what are the options that are there to see if we can start to move something. Just try it. How do you say? Try to see if you can sleep. If you are only sleeping 5 hours, okay, try to see if you can sleep 6 hours.
So true.
uh,
Yeah.
Drinking, okay, create things that makes it easy for you to make sure that you are drinking enough liquids, that you are not over abusing at the end of the day things just that allows you to disconnect, like alcohol. I love my glass of wine with a nice meal, but sometimes it can create us, mainly when we are overworking, it can be the way that people learn to disconnect is through or we are drinking too much coffee. So pay that physiological needs. If you are feeling so miserable, please start there and then start to build from there. And you can change. And I know that when we are under their circumstances, it's difficult to see that because things are so cloudy and so hard, but it's possible to get better results when we take care of ourselves. It's
Yeah.
like we have to see ourselves like almost a sports person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You are part of a team, you are part, and you have a very important role on that team. And if you are in a good shape, you are going to be able to be a better contributor to that team.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. I think there's, we're way past the time of thinking that self-care is a luxury
Oh, no.
and it's
This
going to the spa and da, da, da. It's a necessity in order to be effective in this world, much less in a management or leadership position. I think you're so, and even when circumstances are saying no, you got to work more, you got to sleep less, you got to try harder, we have to fight that and right and go back to things like Maslow and recognizing, and I use the analogy all the time. I still think, if we put an oxygen mask on ourselves before we can put it on others. It's that simple. If you're not doing that, you're doing a disservice to your company, your organization, your family, your friends, your life.
absolutely. And you also study the system of the positive intelligence of Sirzat
Yes.
Samin. You also are a PQ coach. And is one of the images that they use that I absolutely love is the battery. So if everybody has a phone nowadays, and we know that we have to plug the phone once in a while, because what happens if we don't plug the phone? There is no battery, and then we cannot use it. And we also have kind of metaphorical battery inside us. What are we doing to recharge that battery? Or are we always running on empty and just recharging a little bit for like 5 minutes, and I can go a little bit, and then 5 minutes more, and and we are not really taking full advantage of the potential that we have.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Anna, this has been terrific. I want to segue a little bit. I would love to hear if you could share with folks the latest research and writing that you're doing now, the model that you and I discussed before this call. If you could share a little bit about that and maybe give people a preview of the work.
Yeah, because I was looking. I'm writing a book at the moment, and I was looking what can I write, because there are so many good stuff out there. But what can I contribute that can help people in a way? Even when I speak, what I can teach when I'm speaking that is enjoyable and that gives people something that they can immediately do, even without needing to have a cheat sheet to remember all the amazing models that is out there, and even can help them to persist in the change process, because change is messy and there is loads of setbacks, and we have to persist in order to those changes to become our new normal. And what I realized is that, okay, let me start with a very basic thing. And I call it the PI method, because it's PIE. So 3 things that you have to remember. It's really important to learn to any process of self-development as at this base help us to be less reactive and be more proactive. So is that beautiful quote, between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. In that space is the power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Absolutely true. The challenge is to see that space, is to press the button in order to see the space between stimulus and response that allow us to choose our response and have that freedom or learn from it. So how can we, this pressing the pause button to when there is a trigger, we have a moment to decide what to do, to choose to be proactive. This is a muscle. That is where mental fitness enter, and it's a muscle that we can develop. So the P of the PI method is for pause. And what I come to realize is that there are at least 3 types of pauses. The macro pause, so we go to a retreat, or we work with a coach, or we read the book, or we do a program. We are taking a significant amount of time to press the pause button and give us ourselves time for learning, for recharge batteries, for becoming more self-aware. Wonderful. First. And then if we integrate in our day-to-day what the second type of pauses that I call the scheduled pauses, we are building that muscle. And scheduled pauses is like that ritual in the morning of planning the day, or planning the day the day before to the next day, or the journaling, or the gratitude exercise. Doing that little, that we know that in the morning we are going to do that pause, in the middle of the day, wonderful, at the end of the day to change from the work mode to the family mode, to sleep. So where we can start introducing scheduled pauses that allow us to recharge. Great.
Okay.
And then the third type of pauses is what I call the micro pauses. That is that ones that go between the stimulus and the response. But if we do the macro and the schedule, then we are in much better psychological, mental shape for
Yeah.
when there is that trigger to, maybe I can do something different. And sometimes it's going the trigger, the reaction, and we, oops, it's not that I want, and that reflection will help us next time. Trigger, maybe I can do something different. So this is a process, and we really can help us to create being more proactive, more response able. We are able to respond in the way that serve us and serve the ones around us. So that is the P. And this allows us in many ways to go to the second step, that is the I, that is all about increasing our self-awareness. It has to do with emotional intelligence. How can we be more aware of our thinking, about our feeling, and about the actions that we take? And just to go to the essence of this, I love high performance. I love all the work, the body of work that is out there about this. But there is a lot of emphasis about we change our thoughts, our beliefs, that will have changed the way we do things and the results we get. And it's absolutely true. There is a lot of truth on that and power on that. Thoughts, feelings, behaviors. Yet, the reality is a little bit more complex. It's not a linear causation, because if it was enough to change our thoughts and then transformation happen, we could spend all day seeing TED talks and be totally transformed at the end of the day. If insight was the only thing that we need, change will be much easier. But we live the reality that things are a little bit more complex. Insights are not enough to sustain lasting change. That is the reality. So I like to invite people to, instead of seeing like things like thoughts, feelings, behaviors in a linear way that you have to force through that, I like to invite people to imagine a triangle. Triangle, what it is, a form with three sides. You need the three sides. If a triangle loses one side, it ceases to exist. And then imagine in one of the sides of the triangle is for your thoughts, another side's for your feelings, the other side's for your behaviors or actions.
Okay.
You need the three dimensions. For some people, it's easier to become aware of their thinking patterns. Great, start there. For others, will be about their feelings, emotions. For others, it's about their actions. Whatever it's easier for you to become aware, start there, and then ask yourself, how does this interplay with other dimensions? Because this gives us another entry points, more diversity of entry points. Because sometimes if we are stuck in a mindset limitation or in a certain situation, sometimes going for a walk in nature, doing a breathing exercise, doing something is the most effective way to change that dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not, I cannot think positivity. I cannot be happy. Okay. Okay. What can you do to release a little bit of the pressure? And that allows you to increase self-awareness. So you do the pause, allows to increase your self-awareness of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in this triangle model. And then you can try different things. And that takes us to the E of the model, that is experimentation, embracing the experimentation mindset. And why I call it experimentation, because in science, yes, scientists, they have an hypothesis usually, and they are expecting certain results. And when they don't get those results, they don't like it either, but they can learn from it. The big breakthroughs happen when unexpected things happen that make people rethink everything. So if we decide to experiment with something and then it doesn't work, okay, why?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a way of reframing failure. And it's like, and I know that when we have to allow ourselves a little bit of time to lick our wounds, if things don't go as planned, is tough. But then we can, if we think there is no failures, just helpful information to learn from, then we can do something about and we can start to play with it and try again, because change is also not linear. There is relapse is part of the process, failures is part of the process. How can we embrace that messiness and keep moving in the direction that we want?
Oh, love it. Love it. It's a messy pie, but it's a lovely pie, right?
Yes,
Yeah, I
delicious.
love
When we
that.
learn to flavor, is delicious and can bring us a lot of happiness.
Exactly. It's a great everything. It's a great metaphor. It's a great analogy. It's a great acronym. I love it. I love it. I love it. Anna, this has been a real joy. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, can you let us know where can people find you if they want to follow you and hear some more from you?
So if they are listening to this podcast, wherever they are listening, first of all, making sure that you are following Danny's podcast. That is the first thing. So
Thank you.
following button will be somewhere there. And then why not to search mindset.zone? If you like podcasting, my podcast name is Mindset Zone. And on the web, my name, Anna, A-N-A, Melikian, Melikian.com is my website, is the best place to know what I'm up to these days.
Awesome. Yes, dear listener, please do yourself a favor. Follow Anna. Listen to her podcast, follow her work. She's brilliant. I've seen her brilliance increase over the years, and there is no bound. So, both brilliance and empathy and delight and strategies and all of it. So all of it and a bag of chips. So make sure you get on the Anna Melikian train. You won't regret it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Anna. I look forward to hopefully a follow-up at some point. This was so great and hearing some more about your research. Everybody go out and eat some pie, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Anna.
My pleasure.
This is Danny Ceballos with the Unleashed Consulting Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.